So lesson 4.7, as we wind down, getting close to the very end of chapter 4, talking about ratios, talking about unit rates, talking about just rates. It's all about truly understanding how we can use this information and apply it into different scenarios. Questions like, how many shirts can Ashley buy for $200? And how do you know if it's $25 for 3 shirts? Or with Diego, he wants to buy 9 cupcakes. How much money does he need to buy 9 cupcakes if it's 4 for $7? If all I do is teach you how to do math problems, set them up, but you can't apply them and think about them, I'm not doing a very good job. Remember the statement that I showed you a couple of lessons ago from Albert Einstein. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And that's what I really want you to understand. So I want you to walk away from chapter 4 understanding what a ratio is, what a rate is, what a unit rate is, but how to use those in everyday situations that might come up and be able to do it from this point forward. So let's look at the situation that we're in. We're going to think about this before we even start filling in the blanks. The Champy family is traveling from Arizona to Texas. On the first part of the trip, they drove 300 miles in 10 hours. If they continue driving at that same rate, how many hours will it take them to drive 700 miles? It says different ways that we can solve, but let's think about what we're talking about. Okay? So if we just think through it and process using our thinking brain, then we know that we have an original rate mentioned. We have 500 miles in 10 hours. But then we also know that we're going to want to find 750 miles. Well, I'm going to have to find my unit rate first because there isn't anything that I can do to 500 to get 750 miles. See, before we've used these scenarios and these rates and gone to equivalent things, but it doesn't help when I don't have an equivalent numerator and equivalent denominator. I don't know what to do with it. So I'm going to have to come up with my unit rate to then go into what I'm looking for. So my unit rate, once again, from the previous lesson is taking that denominator and making it a 1. So I would divide each of those by 10. And if I divide each of those by 10, then I know my unit rate is 50 miles per hour, or 50 miles for every 1 hour. Can I then change my 50 into 750? Absolutely. Because if I multiply each of those by 15, then I can get my 750 miles in how many hours? 15 hours. So these problems are going to be, here is a rate. Here's another rate that we want to get to, but there's not a simple step to do to multiply or divide to go from one to another. So it's using my unit rate then to change it into the next thing. So I know that I'd have 15 hours. So when I fill in the boxes then, when it talks about what we should have discussed, write the ratio that compares miles to hours. So that's where we started. We had 500 miles for 10 hours. I know I want to change it into 750 miles over some hours. But there wasn't anything mathematically that I could have done to 500 to get 750. 750 is not a multiple of 500. So write the known ratio as a unit rate. So then I take a step back and I reduce this down into a unit rate, so I have a denominator of 1. And I divide it by 10. And that gave me 50 over 1. And when I had that 50 over 1, and then I knew I could use that math and use 50 times something to get my 750. And if I wasn't sure what that was, then my handy-dandy calculator, 750 divided by 50 equals 15. So I knew I was multiplying by 15s, because whatever I multiply my numerator by, I have to multiply my denominator by. So I know I got an answer of 15 hours. So when I'm doing that, I know I have to multiply my numerator and denominator by the same value. That's important for all of these, is always multiplying by the same amount. So when I multiplied by 15s to get my 750, then I multiplied my denominator of 1 for my unit rate by 15, and that gave me the fact that my fractions are the same, so the values are equal to one another. So I ended up with my 750 over 15, 750 over 15. So my unknown value for 750 is going to be 15 hours to drive 750 miles. Taking unit rates and changing it into something else, but not having a unit rate to start with. So getting an original rate, creating a unit rate to create the answer that I'm looking for. All right, so we have Kenyon. He earns $105 for mowing 3 lawns. How much would Kenyon earn for mowing 10 lawns? It gives you this model that we can set up. If I get this much for 3 lawns, how much would I get for 10 lawns? But mathematically, what that's going to look like is when I set it up is I'm going to have to start with my original rate, which they give you. They give you that my original rate is 105 for every 3 lawns, that I'm mowing. But I need to find out what my unit rate is in order to change it into 10 lawns. So when I do that, I'm going to find out what my 10 units is equal to for my value as my denominator. So it says to write the unit rates, which we've done now, or my rates, and now we're going to write my unit rate by dividing by what? I'm going to divide by 3. Because if I divide by 3, it gives me my required unit rate of 1. So when I divide those by 3, I see that we're getting paid $35 per lawn that we are mowing. So if I know that I get paid $35 for every 1 lawn, then if I mow 10, then I would take my 10 and multiply it by 35. So my 10 yards or 10 lawns that I mow at $35 per lawn, then I get my $350 overall. So Kenyon will earn $350 for mowing 10 lawns. So up here we'd have my 105 for 3, and down here I'd have 350 for 10. Well, now we're given a different scenario. It says last summer Kenyon earned $210 for mowing 7 lawns. How did he earn for mowing 5 lawns last summer? How much did he earn for mowing 5 lawns last summer? It says to draw a bar model to represent the situation, solve the problem. So my bar model would look like 7 to 5. Because it says, well, here's 7. Well, how much did he earn for 5? So I'm going to have to then figure out what my even amounts are for those boxes. Well, when I set that up, I use my original ratio that's given to me in my math problem. I'm told $210 for 7 lawns. And then I want to change it into, what about 5 lawns? So when I get my 210 per 7 lawns, I know I have to find my unit rate. And how did I get the 1? Yeah, I divided by 7. And up here I divided by 7. So I know my unit rate was $30 per lawn last summer. Well, how much did he earn then for 5 lawns? Well, if I want to change it into 5 lawns, then I have to multiply numerator and denominator by 5, so I know that he earned $150 for every 5 lawns that he mowed. So it's just using this information that we're given. When we're given 2 ratios or 2 rates to compare, but they don't have a way to truly compare them, then I'm going to have to find my unit rate to then change it into the next one. So as we're going through this, please take your notes, stay focused with me and follow along. They're not difficult, they're just multiple steps. We don't have any difficult math in these, it's just stopping and thinking about what we have to do and setting up the rate, changing it to a unit rate, and then coming up with my missing answer rate that it's asking. So we start with number 1. I want to change from 10 over something, 10 to something, into 6 to 3. What can I do to 6 to get 10? Absolutely nothing. So that's why I have to change it into my unit rate. And if I'm going to change it into my unit rate first, then I know that I'm going to divide by my denominator, which is 3. So I'm going to divide numerator and denominator by 3 to give me what as my new numerator? 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. So now I have a unit rate of 2 to 1, and I want to end up with a numerator of 10. So now what am I doing to the 2 to get 10? Yeah, I multiply by 5. And if I multiply by 5 in my numerator, I have to multiply by 5 in my denominator. And so 5 times 2 is my 10, which it gives me, and 5 times 1 is 5. So I know my missing box is equal to 5 my missing portion, or my unknown value, as is mentioned in the directions. So when I come over here, I see that I have 6 to 8 is equal to something to 20. What can I do to 8 to get 20? Absolutely nothing. So I know I'm going to have to change it into my unit rate. Once again, starting with my rate, changing it into a unit rate, and then going into my missing rate or my missing value, my unknown value that I'm looking for. So to change 6 to 8 into a unit rate, I have to divide by my denominator. Now, wait a minute. All of these that we have done in last lesson and this lesson, we've always ended up with whole numbers, except for one mixed number and one decimal. And this is a small number divided by a large number. So can we do that? Yeah, we can. Okay? If I have to divide by my 8, and this is 6 divided by 8, I just simply divide. And when I write out my division problem, my top number, once again, is going to go into my division box. Well, this one is a number sentence, 6 divided by 8. So instead of my top number, then my first number in a number sentence goes inside my box. And when I have 6 divided by 8 on my handy-dandy calculator, I can type it in, or I can work it out on the side of my paper. 6.0, because I know it's going to be a decimal, divided by 8 does give me 0.75. So I know I'm going to have a numerator of 0.75 for every 1. Or maybe something costs for every 1 candy bar was 75 cents. And if I want to buy 20 of them, how much would I spend? But my unit rate is 7.75 or 75 hundredths to 1, and I have to change it into 20. So what do I do to my 1 to get 20? Yeah, I multiply it by 20. And if I multiply my bottom by 20, I have to multiply my top by 20. And 0.75 or 75 cents times 20, 75 hundredths times 20 gives me 15. So I know that my 15 twentieths is the same as my 6 eighths when it came to my original comparison. So my missing or my unknown value is indeed 15. What about question 3? Question 3 is kind of the same way. It says that we need to use our unit rate to find the unknown value, and it goes from 40 to 45. And what can I do to 40 to get 45? Once again, nothing. So I have to find my unit rate. So I'm going to go out to the side to find my unit rate. And I know that I'm going to divide top and bottom by the same number. What am I going to divide by? Yeah, I'm going to divide by my 8. So if I divide top and bottom by 8 so I can get my denominator of 1, then I'm going to have 5 over 1. And then when I have my 5 over 1 is equal to 45 over something, then I would take my 5 times 9 to get that 45 that they give me. And 5 times 9 gives me 45. And so my denominator, my unit rate of 1 times 9, tells me I'm talking about a missing or an unknown value of 9. On number 4, same thing. I have 42 over 14, and I have something missing over 5. What can I do to 14 to get 5? Absolutely nothing. So I have to find my unit rate. And once again, in order to find a unit rate, I divide by the denominator that's there. So I'm going to divide by 14. But 42 divided by 14, what is that? Well, if we actually type it into our handy-dandy calculator, do 42 divided by 14, I find out it's 3. So my unit rate for 42 to 14 is 3 to 1. And I need to change it to a denominator of 5. So what am I doing to 1 to get 5? I'm simply multiplying it by 5. And once I do that, then I see that I have 3 times 5, which is 15. So my numerator, my missing, my unknown value, is going to be 15. Well, what about these two problems here? I have 4 changing into 9. Can't do it, can we? So how can I solve for 4 30-seconds is equal to 9 somethings, or 4 to 32 is equal to 9 over nothing? Or, well, if I divide by 4s, then I can get a 1. Now, up to this point, we've talked about having a denominator of 1. Well, in this scenario, it's still the same idea, because I'm going to have a rate of 1 either in my numerator and denominator. So could I use a 1 at the top? Yeah, because if I look at this just as a fractions problem, I could reduce it to find an equivalent fraction. It works the same way. Because when I reduce by 4 here, reduce by 4 here, I see a rate of 1 to 8. So 1 teacher for 8 students. 1 candy bar for 8 Skittles. Whatever my comparison would be. But being able to use it is the important thing. Not, does it have to have a denominator of 1? Well, the answer is a unit rate, yes. But getting that 1 lets me think about and do the math that's being applied. So when I change it into a numerator of 9, then I know I'm multiplying at the top and bottom by 9s, which is going to give me 1 times 9 is 9, 8 times 9 is 72. Which one is missing? My denominator is my unknown value. So I know that my answer is 9 to 72. And then in the final one here that we work out the problems, it says 9 to 3 is equal to something over 4. And I can't do anything to 3 to get 4. But I can reduce down to a 1 by dividing numerator and denominator by 3, which is the bottom number. And that gives me my 3 to 1 as my unit rate. And then in order to simply change it into a denominator of 4, then I would multiply numerator and denominator by 4. 3 times 4 gives me 12. 1 times 4 gives me 4. So I know that my missing value is going to be my 12, or my rate that's given is 12 to 4. Then it says to explain how to find an unknown value in a ratio by using a unit rate. Well, it's just telling us to explain what we have been doing in this lesson so you understand it. To use words. We reduce the ratio given down into its unit rate. Once I have the unit rate, then I use the unit rate to find the unknown value. So all of these problems are going to be found by doing these steps. And you're just explaining what those steps are. I reduce the rate that's given in the story problem down to its unit rate. So I know there's going to be a 1. And then I use the unit rate to find the unknown value in the math problem. So as we're doing these, remember it's just taking unit rates and being able to use them in a math problem to solve real life scenarios in situations you might find in how you need to use a ratio or a rate to come up with your answer. Be it t-shirts, cupcakes, gallons, depends on what scenario you're in. Go back and rewind if you need to rewatch it. Watch it at home to make sure you know how to do your homework. Or if you can't figure it out according to the video, then please come and ask questions. It's a short one, so hopefully you won't have to worry about any homework being done tonight at home, but your questions that you need to do are written on the board.